Welcome back to the podcast. Those of you guys who know me, I'm in this biohacking part of my life where really up the ante on health and benefits. And we're bringing guests on to do the same. Today's guest, Zane Griggs, is going to show you how to really create and add more life to your years, not more years to your life, which a lot of people are going, hey, I want to live longer. But what use is living longer if you're not living healthier longer? And Zane today is going to show you what some of the latest and greatest technologies are and techniques for implementing these things in your life. Zane, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it.
In the biohacking world, there's just so much to go after, right? Any of us that have dipped our toe into longevity and started looking at it, sometimes I feel a little bit like a cat chasing a laser pointer around the room. And as we start to dive into that, I'd like us to really kind of start looking at when you start working with human beings, what are the things you start with them?
All right, well, at first, I look at kind of overall lifestyle. Where are they now? What are they doing now? And if they have blood work available, I like to take a look at that to see what that might be telling me as far as metabolic markers, hormone markers, just kind of see what our baseline is. We want to get a baseline so we can know when we make changes that we're moving in the right direction. And so getting a baseline on their health with primarily for me, not being a doctor, not a medical professional, but just in my experience with my own health and my clients, I look at some of the metabolic markers like fasting insulin and some of their fasting glucose, and I'll look at hormone depending on male or female, but look at their sex hormones, thyroid, things like that, and see where they are now, so that I know that what impact their current lifestyle is having, and so we can make not just short-term goals but long-term goals for their health, like avoiding metabolic disease, avoiding things like obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and now we're seeing a close link of dementia to metabolic disease. And then if what they've been doing is hurting that in some way or affecting thyroid, if they're working a little too over dieting, over exercising, thyroid stipping, and just with age, the age related hormone changes that happen and how stress has an impact on that as well. And so I try to get assessment baseline, but then we start with diet. The first thing to change would be, what are you putting in your body? Because it's not just what's going in from a nutrient standpoint, but what toxins are going on, what things are creating oxidative stress. And I think if we go back to the origin of disease or chronic disease in our bodies right now, it's even they learn this in med school, but then they forget it. It's oxidative stress. It's oxidative stress in the cell and the mitochondria, but then they turn around like, well, then here's a medication, here's a therapy for the symptoms, but it doesn't address the root cause. The root cause is oxidative stress. And we can handle a certain amount of oxidative stress. A little bit is good, makes us stronger. Too much beyond what our antioxidants can handle creates disease. It overwhelms our antioxidant pool, whether we're making it or consuming them. There's only so much we can do if we're putting so many toxins in our body through our food or through our environment, that we are creating so much oxidative stress that's creating problems in either in our gut, in our mitochondria, which then leads to metabolic disease. And so what I found is through research, going back, we didn't have evidence of like our current epidemic of metabolic disease 130 years ago. So in 1901, the obesity rate was 1%. And even as recently as 1930, so just 100 years ago, type 2 diabetes only impacted about 1/3 of 1%. Okay. And in the early 1900s, most cardiologists never saw a heart attack, never saw any severe case of heart disease. We have created, and these are the diseases that are killing us. 1 in 4 men with heart disease, right? Obesity is 42%. Pre-diabetes, diabetes, undiagnosed diabetes, we're probably talking 40-50% of the population. Fatty liver disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, 25-30% of the population. We created these diseases in the 20th and 21st century. And
It's amazing how we went from, back you go back 100 years ago, more people died from bullets than anything
yes,
else. Today, more people die from sugar than bullets, right?
yeah, and
The thought of that
it,
is just crazy.
it's the processed food. I think the processed oils that we've created, like the canolas, the safflower, the sunflower, all those that we really created starting with cottonseed oil in Crisco in 1910, that kicked it off, where we started making processed food. We have these fake fats and creating amount of these are very oxidative fats, which means they're they they oxidize like rust is oxidation, okay, or something is very explosive. So when that gets in our cells in a small amount, it's manageable. We can handle the oxidative stress, but we're in large amounts because 60% of the average American's diet is made up of these processed foods. and that these fats, these fatty acids that are in these processed oils, in our ancestral diet or even our diet like 120 years ago, they made up 2, 3%, 4% of our diet. Now they make up 80% of our fats and 20% of our calories. Well, that's a huge change in 100 years
Yeah.
of this very oxidative fat, as opposed to a stable fat like a saturated fat or monounsaturated fat. They don't have places in their molecule for oxygen to get in to create reactions. Well, these polyunsaturated fats have many openings. And so in our mitochondria, they create a lot of stress. This leads to, in my opinion, I think to the large degree of more than anything else, the insulin resistance that we see that's causing all these other diseases. There's other things like endotoxins and gut bacteria and things like this that also contribute. But this processed food, we can just say without getting in the minutia, before processed food, we didn't have these diseases. They were not significant. Once we got processed food into our food system, and now it makes up again 60, 70% of the average American diet, and we exported it, and we can see the same pattern in Australia, in India, in Japan, in China, in Europe. We see the same thing all over the world, same pattern. The more processed food as it came in, the higher the rates of chronic disease went up.
That's interesting. I mean, you're really going, you can see that shift. Now, I'm
The
not going to say
population
that,
studies, you can see that shift. Yes.
well, I mean, but I'm not going to say that, if you look back, I mean, 100 years ago, we had mostly an organic diet until we started adding all these but people
Correct.
weren't necessarily living longer there, right? So I think we have a combination of both, right? I mean, there's somewhere in there the foods that we're eating that were healthy, which we weren't having heart disease then,
We weren't having
but
heart disease, obesity, or diabetes, which is what's
right,
killing us
right.
now.
Those are the big killers today. We
Yeah.
were dying from other things where science had to
Infectious
figure stuff out.
disease,
Yeah, that
famine,
was right,
war. We've
right,
solved for those mostly because we
right.
have medicines for most infectious disease. We have somewhat of a peace. We have um, we don't have a problem with famine. We have a food abundance in most places, except for some
Right.
rare spaces on Earth.
That's right.
But as a Western nation, what Western nations with all these modern medicine, and yet we're dying from diseases that are self-inflicted. They're chronic diseases from our food system. Okay, do we not move enough? I don't know. A lot of people move quite a bit. I see a lot of marathoners, and I see people who are lifting weights and going to the gym and they're walking and they're doing all these things. People back then, they weren't looking for more ways to move. They moved enough. They were looking for how do I do less because
Yeah, they
because
were
I
just trying to
move enough.
survive. I mean,
Yeah, trying to survive.
they were physically working. Yeah, but
Right.
you can see the difference in the body skeletons or the body types of Americans today. The
Yes.
inflamed bodies. I mean, if you just really spend some time looking around, not judging but just looking and noticing that, the amount of inflamed body, just the fats and the stuff that we have that we're carrying,
Yes.
compared to what they had, 100 years ago, you could see the difference in it. And
Oh,
that's all that processed food that's really,
I'm saying the
uh,
processed food is probably the primary
yep,
driver, and
yep,
the only
yep.
way we can test this, you can't test this now because we've all been subjected to the processed food. We've all taken in. There's no control group. We don't have a clean control group. The only way to get a clean control group is to look back in time. We don't need a science lesson. We need a history lesson. Let's go back in a time
Yeah,
before we had the
right.
processed food. It didn't exist, and as processed food increased as part of our diet, so did the diseases. And they correlate. There's people who have mapped this out. Researchers have mapped this out very well. They correlate better than anything is the processed food in these oils. Now, it's epidemiology, but to the end, we don't have a clean control group unless we look at indigenous tribes that do not eat an industrial diet. And there's a few of those left out there, like in New Guinea and South America and some of the South Pacific islands. Even if we go back a little bit to Okinawa before they got some of this, they were eating from their geographical region. There was not one type of diet. It varied, but some of them had very high carb, like 60, 80% carbohydrate from their but it was whole food. Maybe they had lower protein. Some had more coconut oil, and in the islands they have coconut oil, saturated fat, and they had fish and some fruit and tubers. Great. No, none of them had metabolic disease. None of them still, those that are staying in their indigenous cultures and tribes without the industrial food, have metabolic disease. They've escaped it somehow because they're not eating our diet. They're still eating from their geographically available food sources.
It
And
it it's kind of it's almost like, duh, and although
very
right?
frustrating.
but it's but the problem is the food industry sells us on and Eric, and I'm not gonna go play villain to those people because the truth
Right.
is we needed to create that many calories to serve the massive amount of growth we've had in 250 years. We needed all of that production to do that. Now I think what we're saying is, hey, those aren't bad guys. It's just now to notice, all right, the pendulum swung one way. We could produce all of this stuff, and maybe some of it's valuable because you can't always have perfect food all the time, but
No,
it can't be 100% of your diet. It's got to go back to that,
maybe a 5 or 10% of your
yeah,
diet.
yeah, right, right,
It's a
right.
special thing. It's not something, and then go back to whole food. We now have the technology to produce a lot of whole food
Yeah.
from fruits and veggies and local meats and things like this, where we're eating like we did back, off a farm, essentially.
So I think that that's the thing to notice, is right. Food production and the processed food came up, but so is the good stuff, right? I
Yeah.
mean, our ability to produce fresh vegetables
And
and
fruit.
organic vegetables and fruits
Yeah.
and meats are actually getting there. I mean, look, I've been talking to one of the big customers we have on the construction side, and they're working on 3,000. This is a hamburger brand that everybody knows. They're working on 3,000 farmers right now to do farm to table hamburger meat, right? Organic. If that company breaks, and they're one of the people that everybody busts their chops about health and nutrition. If that company breaks farm to table beef, it will change the world. I mean, look. I think your point is that all right. Now it's time. We were there.
Hmm.
Now it's time to really start with dialing in the diet because none of the other stuff gets effective without step one, which is really in order that ladder to personal development.
Right.
You can't make it without taking the first step, which is you got to feed the body. Now let's
Properly.
talk
Yeah.
about that because I got friends of mine who are all organic, but then they drink a bottle of wine every night.
Yeah. Alcohol is not your friend. There's nothing beneficial about alcohol. Now, can you? So it's that oxidative stress thing again. So how much can we withstand? Well, maybe 100 years ago we could handle a little more alcohol because we didn't have all these other toxins coming in our body. Yeah, they're organic, but there's still environmental things. There's stress. There's light. There's the fluorescent and the lights that we're under all inside all the time that we're not used to. We don't we have other chemical toxins. We have the cleaners, the all the things that hit us that we're not aware of, but our body is dealing with all the time that creates oxidative stress, and our bodies manage to filter it out or to to tackle it with mold. Mold's another good one, right? So it's finding your piece of oxidative stress. But I don't think if you've noticed, there's a younger generation that is drinking less than we ever did. I mean, you and I are
Drinking's
Generation
down. I
X.
mean, look,
It's
I'm not
out.
saying
Yeah.
it's not. Well, I'm sure it's good. But like, I got 2 daughters to go to Dayton. They're still drinking over in Dayton. I'm just saying, but here, not like we did. I
No.
throw their graduation party. I live in an old factory, so I throw the graduation parties, and for three of them, I had a security guard out front, thinking, oh my god, because I imagine the parties I had when I was a kid,
Yeah.
right? And the truth was, they're pretty damn good and they're pretty reasonable. And they're maybe a little bit of, beer pong or something, but it wasn't anything dramatic.
Right.
Right. So I think your point is that we've gotten to a place where we're not, um, it's not
I think
crazy.
we're mindful and thoughtful about alcohol consumption, and a lot of them in a certain generation, they hardly drink, and they're looking for mocktails and looking for. We have drinks now that are being sold. They have like what 3 to 4% THC in them, and a little bit of cannabinoid and some lion's mane into some little drink they pop open, and that's their cocktail that relaxes them a little bit. Or we have these, and it's not they're not worshiping alcohol the way we did in the 70s and 80s. You know,
And I think there's a whole nother topic to get into why the brain's so jittery and what has us so uncomfortable. And I think we could get into that. Like, but today, I think the point you're trying to get at is we're getting more reasonable with the poisoning. Because look, if you're an alien looking at what we did at our
oh,
age, I mean, we literally drank ethyl alcohol, poisoned our bodies to get dizzy, stop
yeah.
feeling, right?
We were testing the limits of our body's ability to adapt and heal. We really did.
Yeah,
And
right. I mean, but Zane, I certainly have had to go to the hospital with a couple of friends who had their stomachs pumped because of alcohol poisoning. I mean, just when you say that out loud, that just speaks to the time I grew up in, right?
oh yeah, oh,
Yeah,
I was right there with you. In the 80s
yeah,
and 90s were
yeah.
were like I mean, it was nuts. Um, and that was even the worst thing. You know,
No,
I mean,
totally.
it was like there was heroin everywhere, there's cocaine everywhere, there was like people were smoking heroin, snorting heroin. I mean, it was it was like we were on a freight train to like I mean, it's nuts. And so now to see this younger generation how to be more mindful about it, and they're into biohacking, they're into meditation. They're thinking about, oh, it's how about some lion's mane? Even my 26-year-old son's like getting stuff with like lion's mane and he's ordering these things. I'm like, what are you doing with mushroom mixes for your and there's an awareness of this that is it's great to see, you know. But yeah, I think it's a toxin. We have to honor it that way. We have to respect it and consume it respectfully, you know what I mean? And
So
that's
this could get step one, get the toxins out of your body, put nutrition in, right?
yeah,
Start with the fundamentals of good things that you're feeding it,
yeah.
uh, and get as regimen about that. Now,
Mhm.
proteins, carbs, microbe, how do you start to figure out that world? And, which way am I going? More protein? Am I going more carbohydrates? Am I going vegetarian? Am I going vegan? Uh, Talk a little bit about,
Oh man, you open up the diet dogma. I have been through it all. So in my 20s, vegan, vegetarian, 30s, and preaching low carb. Then in my late 30s or 40s, intermittent fasting, fasted workouts. I have over cranked, over leveraged the majority of the extreme diets to the point of crashing and burning, like either undernourished, overtrained, cortisol levels through the roof, bad sleep, uh, crashing thyroid, all these things that are we take to extremes, right? We want the magic bullet. We want to take the I can do it good. A little's good. A lot must be better, right? Do it diet harder,
come
or
on,
like
Zane, isn't that true? Come on. If it's a steak, but steak every meal?
no, no. I mean, I'm very familiar, very comfortable with the people in the carnivore diet and the keto world, and I have friends there, but I do not agree with them. And I've done enough low carb and intermittent fasting and stuff to know and to understand the impact on the body long term. I think these could be interventions that could be used for short periods of time, but I think once your body starts adapting to them, that's not a good thing. I think there are long term problems with diets that eliminate um, certain entire macronutrients or strictly
A well-rounded, so you're saying just like, all of
a
us,
balanced whole food diet.
balanced whole food diet. So he's not saying balance means, good food over here and then adding in the Fritos and the Captain Crunch.
I mean, those, if you have those in, please don't give them any sort of like beneficial validity. I mean, those are your little cheat things, and you have to decide how much of that you allow in. But a whole food diet we know is not harmful. As I mentioned, those indigenous cultures that are eating a variety of macronutrient balances or ratios, but they're eating from um, their geographical region. And I'm not saying we have to eat from our geographical region. What I'm saying is they don't have processed foods, so they don't have metabolic disease. So if you want to start by avoiding metabolic disease, avoid the processed foods, eat whole food. Then I think talking to different people, there's some people who feel better with a little more fat than others. Others do better with a little bit lower fat and a higher carb. And then the protein should be, I think, moderate. I think a good range, like I said, with protein, a good healthy um, research backed, research supported amount of protein, animal protein, okay, because that's the complete protein coming in would be like if you're for your healthy weight of a health, if you're using your healthy weight, not if you're 300 pounds and obese, but of your healthy weight or your goal weight, zero point 0.6 to zero point 0.8 grams per pound of ideal body weight or healthy body weight is a good supported amount. Okay, so if that gives someone to start with your protein goal, zero point 0.6 to zero point 0.8 of, so if you weigh 200 pounds, that's 120 to 160 grams of protein in there. You're fine. Just have good quality food, and you're good. And then the fat ratios. I mean, you could balance those out. Remember Barry Sears' zone diet? Remember
Yeah.
that from
Yeah,
back?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many young people have no idea who that is. But he had the whole 40, 30, 30,
Yeah.
40% fat, 30% protein, 30% carbs. And if you did that and you feel good on it, great. If you need to change those ratios where you pull your protein back to 25 and your carbs up to 60 and your fat back to, um, 15, and that helps you lose weight for a while, or if you or you're very athletic and you know you're doing a lot of high intensity activity, you need more carb. If you're a little more, you just want my hormones balanced, I'm not super active, and you want to balance out and you want a little more fat in there, so you're not hungry all the time, and you can do maybe just 3 meals and not worry about anything. And you want your fat up around closer to, I don't know, 25-30% of your calories, and you pull the carbs back. I mean, I think what I'm saying is there's room to navigate your mix with using whole food and figure out what's ideal for you. I think the protein is pretty pretty like, that's kind of well established by research for benefit of people who are active and want to keep muscle
Yeah.
and have some level of satiety. And then the fat carb mix, there's some individuality there where you can kind of bring those in as long as they're good quality sources. Uh, we don't need to argue. We just need to find our mix. We need to find our ratio that seems to work for us best. And depending on what we're working on at the time, be ready for your strategy to need to change, or even intentionally change, like cycling through, where you might do a cycle of a higher fat and a little bit less carb, and then you cycle back to like in the winter, and then maybe in the summer you're a little higher carb and lower fat, which would make sense from, if you were having to survive in the wilderness, your food availability would change from a fatty meat and nuts and tubers available through the winter, and then in the summer when you have more fruit available, and game goes higher ground, and you maybe it's a little more, or the game is more active and the meat's a little bit leaner. I think we want to set it and forget it kind of um track for diet, and I don't think that's realistic, or even how our body works. I don't think that's ideal. There's no set it forget it. Our body keeps changing as we get older. We have to change, we have to adjust. What are we working on right now? What ailment am I dealing with, or what?
Right. So now we got
I
the,
know I can go on forever. I'm
no, no,
sorry.
no, I got it. So I got the adjustments on diet and dialing that in. I'm currently on a high protein, uh,
Okay.
high protein, and no sugars. I really have worked on taking sugars out, but that for
Okay.
me was more about I couldn't get to the I couldn't get to the numbers you're talking about because I kept relapsing on sugar because I didn't realize I was in. It was
Were
kind of
you
like
eating a lot of fruit? Is that what it
yeah,
was?
it
Or
was fruit, but then also at night I would get these cravings and hungry, baffling, and power. So for me, sugar was just as much an addiction as smoking or drinking or any of
okay.
the other stuff was. And I would find myself, I would be sitting on the couch and I'd be like, all right, go to bed. And I would find myself going by the kitchen and knocking down 500 calories without even blinking. And it would be like I knew didn't need to do that. I'd be a row of cookies or, by the way, I've got a mother-in-law who's Greek who keeps putting Greek cookies on my countertop. I'm like,
Oh,
stop doing that. But I'd find myself unconsciously eating. And then I realized I was in withdrawal. Right? I really realized that my sugar levels would drop, and I did a glucose monitoring for few months, and I got to watch how I was cycling with sugars. I would just notice, that I would have these withdrawals. So the no sugar diet has really made a big difference. I'm taking a handful of berries, blueberries after a workout in the morning, but other than that, just to replace the sugars I burned out. But so that's working right now. But I like what you're saying. Let's dial it in to where you work. And by the way, I can see how that's a cycle, right? I could go through this for a cycle and then make a shift, but do it consciously, right? And I
correct.
think as humans, we look. All of you guys are out there doing this right now. All of you want something to work on, or we wouldn't be listening to podcasts. Or you wouldn't be doing this kind of stuff as human growth. So find keep dialing into what Zane's saying is keep working on that diet. So now we get diet down. Now all right, we got this fundamentally. We're doing well. We're in a constant. We're working. Maybe it's not always perfect. We're practicing the principles. Not always perfect, but practicing them. So now we got that down. Zane, what's step two to really dialing in? Uh,
Movement.
all right,
You got to move. You got to exercise, and I think there's more and more evidence that is one of it. I mean, it keeps going back and forth. We see this research pushing, oh, it's diet, and then it's exercise for longevity. You hear Peter Tia talking about, hey, I think exercise is the most important component for longevity. And so, not to say he's right, or not to say that it's one or the other. I don't think we don't need to choose. What we need to do is make sure it's a priority, and don't discount exercise as not being important, which unfortunately there's a lot of people in the nutrition space who discount the importance of exercise. And they say you can't outrun a bad diet, yet you can you can under exercise for your health and longevity. I mean, you can have a great diet, but you're gonna miss out on the benefits of exercise, of putting on muscle and retaining muscle and bone density, and the benefits to the nervous system and the brain and the chemicals that are released when you work out. And I mean, there's just so many benefits to. I mean, think about that. If you're over 60, the statistics are, if you're over 65 and you fall and break your hip, odds are you're going to die within 6 months of breaking that hip at 65. Now, how many times have you and I fallen down in our lives playing sports? We watch people play sports, we watch kids fall down, we watch professional athletes crash into each other. Does anybody break a hip and die within 6 months to a year?
No, no, no,
No.
but
But
right, right. So
with age, there's
movement.
a precipitous decline. And why is that? Because we stop moving. We
Well,
stop
yeah,
building. We still hold on to muscle. We don't have the bone density. We don't have the nervous system that reacts like it used to, because we don't train it, because we aren't, because that generation isn't training it. And if you're, think about, you're a fall in your own house away from a miserable 6 months to death. That
think
is
about that. That's
at
insane.
65.
Right, it's
65. You and
insane.
I can look forward and see 65 coming.
I hear it's a
It's, you're
couple
planning
false
for
sleeps
it.
it up.
You're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
planning at
No, no.
65 right now.
Look, I'm going to call that the halfway point. I'm working on making that the halfway point.
But
So
you're thinking
yeah,
about 65. A 20-year-old's not thinking about 65. You and I are thinking about, where do I want to be at 65? That we don't want to be brittle and weak and have a body that doesn't respond to changes because we stepped off a curb, or because there was a chair leg sitting out in the kitchen and we stub our toe and fall. That's a reality. And that can be prevented by an appropriate exercise routine, not perfect one, just one that keeps us consistent. Walking, strength training, some high intensity work here once or twice a week, a little high intensity of some sort, whether it's an assault bike or sprinting, um, long steady movement like walking, swimming, get on the bike, move. That can be done every day. And then some strength training a few times a week would be tremendous for most people. 2 or 3 times a week of just a full body workout, challenging your strength, holding onto that muscle, challenging the bone, making the bone denser, your ligaments denser. These This could save your life from a silly, stupid fall.
you see it, you know it. Um, Now, I think part of I've kind of come up with a theory that says some of the importance of good diet is that it gives us the energy to go and do the workout.
For
But
sure.
I think your point is you could still here, even if you eat like crap, but at least you're getting a workout in. It's there's a there's still a 10x of
There's
longevity.
benefit. Oh, yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, look, guys who are drinking, but I did that. I'd drink and like a fish, and I'd go work out every day. And here wasn't. I don't recommend. Everybody, by the way, folks, I'm not recommending that. I'm just saying, at least there was a pretty good chance that I was keeping my blood in order, my arteries in order. I
Yeah.
was, it's not what I recommend
You're
today,
moving
but
energy into tissue. So you're moving
yeah,
blood sugar into muscle, and you're getting a storage for sugar, that glycogen, that fuel that we all need in your muscle. But you're also preventing, you're accident proofing yourself in a sense. So it would, because you can't avoid, no one's avoided fall. How long have you go without falling? If you're active, you fall, things happen.
yeah.
You know, ultimately something's going to happen to knock you down.
Well,
You want to
especially
be able
if
to
you're
get
not
back
moving.
up.
Especially if you're not moving. I've got a really close friend of mine,
Yeah.
Charlie and I talk all the time. And Charlie smokes and he doesn't move. He sits on the couch and hangs out with his cat all day. And I'm like, Charlie, you're going to fall down and bust your ass here, and that's going to take you out. And he's a perfect example of, no movement and bad health. The combination of those is just, it's like a duh.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think that generation of people could not see it, right? I think they came from, workouts back then were maybe Vic Tanny or some of those guys. There was a couple of the old school guys that
Yeah.
did some workouts, but they didn't understand that you can. One of the number one biohacks are
Yeah.
movement
Movement.
and great amount of movement, just like you're talking about. So
Yeah.
so let's go back through that again. So we got consistent workouts. So long walks, great one. right?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I mean, not strolling. This is not shopping speed. This is like you go out and hoof it. You're walking or trails or hills, whatever. Your heart rate should come up in that close to zone two, zone one, zone two. Like if you're in our age, it's probably right around 90 to 100. If you're in your 50s, it's going to be 90 to 100 or so. If you're a little older, maybe you don't need to come up as high, but find your top of your zone one, close to zone two range, and that you should be able to hit that throughout your walk. And
That should be a no-brainer. I mean, that's an easy stroll. I mean, you get a
yeah,
good 5-mile walk in an hour and a half type deal. You're
yeah.
enjoy the scenery, enjoy the walk,
Bring
find
someone with you, conversation, listen to a
conversation. Yeah,
podcast.
yeah. No, no, I'm with you. Those conversations are literally some of
Yes.
their best therapy, right? So you're covering two parts of longevity, which is
Yeah.
movement and getting out of
Connection.
your head, right?
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and that relationship stuff. So a great point right there, Zane. I want to make sure we really talk about it. So we got eat well,
Mhm.
move your ass,
Move
pick
your
up
ass.
heavy stuff.
Yeah, pick up heavy stuff, move at the low level a lot. You can do that hours or an hour or a half hour. If it's 20 minutes, that's all you got. Do the 20 minutes, but get it daily. Like get it as often as you can, twice a day if you need to. If it's 20 minutes here and 20 minutes there, get out and go for a walk. But strength training 2 or 3 times a week is a good goal, good minimum goal. You can get a lot of benefit from that. And then if you're up for it, some high intensity, like short bouts, like those 30-second, 20, 30-second, maybe a minute long, full out effort. That's, maybe it's a 15, 20-minute workout, whether it's a salt bake or sprinting once or twice a week would be the cherry on top. That would be like, if you could add, go from
Yeah,
a B to an A, then
yeah.
you add in the sprinting, but a B will get you a long way, which is the walking and some strength training.
Here, and I'm gonna say for those of you that are wondering, I can't even do that. Even if you get to a C or D, if you lower the bar, I tell folks all the time, keep lowering the bar to anything. Anything's better
Yeah.
than nothing, right? I mean, it's better than nothing, and getting to anything
It's
will
a,
excite you to get to that next level.
yeah, it's a journey. Yes, right.
Yeah.
The next level, you start wherever you can start, but know that the next step is ahead of you. It's like you keep progressing, you build on that. I mean,
All right. So now we got eat good food,
yeah,
move your ass,
yeah,
pick up heavy stuff.
yeah.
What's next?
Honoring our sleep, believe it or not, is more important than when we again, the 80s, we neglected sleep. It was like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? It was that
Oh,
kind of
come on. How many times
mentality.
have you said that? How many times have you said that? Right? It just
I try not to say it anymore because it's so important. It impacts our metabolic health. It impacts our insulin levels and our thyroid levels and our decision making about food. It impacts our ability to perform in those workouts, but it impacts the way our brain works and can have long-term negative impact on cognitive health, cognitive decline. So we need that sleep. If somebody's sleep tracking, I don't know if it stresses you out or not, but I like sleep tracking. I like looking at my metrics like, okay, what was good about that day that made my sleep so good, or what did I do wrong during the day or what could I do better that could improve my sleep? Like eating late. Eating a big dinner before bed within an hour or two of bed will throw off your sleep because you're digesting. You need a good 3 hours ideally between your last big meal and going to bed. Alcohol will totally ruin your sleep. Within 1 or 2 hours of going to bed, that alcohol it's going to depress you a little bit, and then those adrenals are going to come back up as you process that alcohol, and your adrenals are and you're going to wake up at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, probably a little warm, and going, whoa, what's going on? Why am I awake? Why am I wide awake thinking about all the things I have to do tomorrow? It's like, that's the alcohol wearing off, and your adrenals that have been trying to keep your heart rate up are still on full board, keeping you alive. Um, Things like, movement really does help you sleep. Go getting those walks and getting the movement in, getting outside and sunlight in your eyes during the day helps the sleep. And the sleep is when your brain repairs, it's when your body repairs, the growth hormone is released, your brain does a clean out phase, it cleans all the garbage all out of the brain and the fluids out that needs to, and really resets, helps you deal with your thoughts, your emotions. That's when you process things through the dreams and everything. You're processing emotions and thoughts, and you're healing your body. And these are waves of sleep, from deep sleep where you're healing your body to the REM sleep where you're dealing with emotions and thoughts and processing and consolidating memories. You know, these are the things. And then the HRV, which is a new metric for in the last few years that we see for sleep, which is the heart rate variability, which is it's kind of the time between each heartbeat. So when you're out in go, go, go mode during the day, you're like a metronome. Your heart rate's like a metronome. It's like boom, boom, boom on the dot, right? But when we're sleeping, when we're parasympathetic state, much more relaxed state, it should be arrhythmic. It should be really the space between the beats, the time between the beats should be very variable, very variable. It could be zero point 0.8 here and then 1.2 seconds there, and then maybe it's a zero point 0.7 seconds, then it's a 1.3. I mean, it should vary throughout the night, and that's the HRV, and it's an indicator of our parasympathetic state, or how deep we are in that rest and digest state of mind, right? That really helps us heal and recover. But when we stay in sympathetic all the time, that's when we're waking up and we have restless sleep. We start having the health issues because we're not getting the benefits of what should be coming from our sleep. And we got to balance the sympathetic with the parasympathetic. And I think the people in our, not only in our age group, but the people who are like the drivers, the CEOs and the business owners, those are the guys who are like, they're in sympathetic mode all the time. And the hardest thing is to get into that recovery mode and that parasympathetic state where you can bring everything down, really land the plane from your day so you can get into that restful state and better communicate with your family, better communicate with your spouse and your kids, and then be ready to really get into a nice deep sleep. That's a mindset shift. That's a shift in your nervous system from sympathetic to parasympathetic. So you can connect and you can relax. I mean, it's that I think that's the biggest vulnerability of most busy, successful professionals is that recovery states. Getting the parasympathetic is where we can bring things down and really recover so we can perform better the next day and connect with people
I,
we
I
care
think I
about.
think for most of my life, I just passed out. Right. I would literally just get to the end of the day,
Yeah.
right. And today I really look at sleep very much like I do landing an airplane. I
Yeah.
fly planes, and for me, a great landing doesn't start at the runway. It started at the turn to base, right? And how I approach my approach, a stabilized approach really
Yeah.
creates a beautiful landing, right? And no matter what the winds are, crosswinds, no matter what happens, if I can get a stabilized approach, I can really dial in a great landing. And I feel the same thing as with sleep, right? Just like you talked about. Look, it's eating 2 or 3 hours before I get to bed, right?
Mhm.
Coming in, staying on that glide path, right? Starting to lower the lights as I get towards the night. One of my practices today is that, about an hour to 30 minutes to an hour before I go to bed, I turn off all the lights in the house. I start to dim the house down, right? At 30 minutes before bed, I'm trying to get into my bed where I try to turn off the phone, which I'm not always great at. I've been complaining a lot lately about scrolling. And then I start to read, right? And reading isn't, I never was great at meditating, but reading the black letters gives me a little bit of, today's my format for meditation, right?
Mhm.
Reading the black letters, just have my brain concentrate on one word at a time and really digesting that starts to have a really stabilized approach to my sleep pattern. And I've noticed a dramatic difference. Now, I'm not saying that I sleep. One of the ones I'm having a hard time with today is staying asleep. I'm just still get up at 2 or 3 in the morning to go pee,
Yeah.
and then maybe once or twice I'm still doing that. So I got to work on that one a little bit.
Yeah. That's a big one. That's very, very common. And even some of the guys who I know are the healthiest, most, they do every change they can for their health. Like that is their focus. And they still, I mean, their late 40s to the 50s, it's like, I'm still getting up to go pee at least once, and it's just like,
Twice, yeah.
or twice, but I mean, those, the best of them, it's like, it's almost impossible to avoid, but they're able, because of their state, when they go back, they can get back into sleep, and because they've had their mind, settled, right, and they've done the things that they need to do as best as they can to make the
Yeah.
most of that time, and that's all we can do is really make the most of that.
I'm hit or miss, right?
Yeah.
50% of the time, my wife will tell me, she'll, because I get up, I go pee, and the brain starts,
Mhm.
and I start worrying about a podcast or a business deal or someone I'm working on or some problem I'm having in the business. Once my brain starts, and it's kind of unkind, it just wants to work things out, right? My brain is like, what about this? I'll do that. If I do this, and then I find myself going, all right, I've got to turn that off. So then I'll go pick up my phone and I'll start scrolling. And then it's hot girls in bikinis to try to get my mind off of it. And then there's, 30 minutes to an hour goes by in the middle of the night. And I'm like, yeah, that wasn't it. So here, I'm looking for more of those tips at night where,
Yeah.
getting to a place of getting back to sleep.
Yeah. What I've done recently, I woke up, I started thinking of like ideas just hit me for some reason at 2 or 3 in the morning that I was like, I want to do a post on this, I want to do a post on this. And I'm like, I'm not going to remember this. So I thought one thing I might remember, two things possibly, three or four, no. So I would get up, I found a notebook. So I wasn't getting a screen with the lights coming in my eyes to tell my brain that the sun is up. And I just tried to write neatly as I could so I could try to still be able to read it the next morning, but write as neatly as I could, wrote out the ideas, wrote out like 6 things, and then I put it down and I went back to bed and got it out of my head. I'm not worried about remembering it. I expressed it, and I did it without shining a bright light in my eyes. And I managed to get back to sleep eventually. It was not a great night, but that was right now, that's my best way to handle an idea. And that's not new. That's not novel. People have been
Yeah.
telling us to do this forever. It's just better doing it. Like instead of sitting here fighting and wrestling with my brain, I'm going to get up and have a cathartic moment, write it out without stimulating my brain as much as possible. And, um, and it was, I mean, I could have done worse. Let me put it that way.
Hey, if any audience members got any great ideas, I've also incorporated a pulsetto, one of those
There you
vagus nerve
go.
stimulators. I think
Yeah.
it's helping a little bit. I'm not noticing it completely yet, but any audience members, put some comments down there. Look, I want your input. If you got a sleep hack to get that after I go pee back to sleep technique, I'll put that down there for Zane and I. We'll talk about that on our next podcast. So, all right. So Zane, now we got food, right? Rocking the food. We got move your ass, pick up heavy shit, get a workout full out a couple times a week.
Yeah.
Now we're going to sleep, try to master sleep and start to dial that baby in, right? We
Hmm.
really want to get great sleep. What's great sleep? What's a minimum I need to, or if I'm a marker, does 6 hours do it?
I think with a high quality sleep, if you're matching, if you're getting the deep and the REM hours in and you have a high quality sleep, you can do 6 hours and be active and professional. And I know that the things we're saying, oh, 8 to 9 hours. I can't sleep 8 to 9 hours without being
I haven't been
sedated.
able to do it. I,
No,
I, I keep thinking maybe there's some hack where when I retire or something, I'll be able to, you know,
I don't know. I don't know who these people are that sleep that long. I mean, unless they're just training, like they're professional athletes who are training 5 or 6 hours a day. I can see how that would work. But I go with how I feel. And if I get from 6 to 7, I feel like that's a win
all
of
right, so
actual
good. So
sleep time.
I'm right there. Any of you guys out there that can they're getting 8 hours or more, tell us how you're doing it. Put that down there as well. So all right, so now we get sleep.
Males getting six, six
That's right. That's right.
eight
You're right. You're right. You're
hours.
right. That's right. That's
Females,
right.
they have no
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, my kids, my daughters can sleep 12 and not even blink. All right, so
Easy.
now we got sleep down pat. Now what's next?
Okay, so that's the foundation for everybody. You start with that foundation, the diet, exercise, and sleep. That's the base of your pyramid, so to speak. And those things, there's no out. You can add to those, you can leverage those better, you can do things to help improve that. But if those habits aren't in place, nothing you do above that is going to fix what you're doing there because those are lifestyle choices. So the next layer, especially with our aging group, is like we get eyes on the hormones, and we at the strategic time when it's appropriate based on your needs, what your body's telling you. Hormone replacement therapy, in my opinion, is probably the most effective biohack we have available when it's done by a practitioner who knows what they're doing. So basically, your typical doctor might tell you, oh, your hormones are normal for your age. Well, nobody over 40 wants to be normal for their age,
Well,
right?
that's what happens. I've got this great doctor. She's one. I mean, I love my doctor, but she's like, well, you're high twos, low threes, you're fine. But I'm like, doc,
That's
and then
not
I go to
fine. That's
yeah,
horrible.
yeah. Then I go to a sports guy. And they're like, no, you got to be 800 or more. And I'm like, okay, all right. So, and I, just the problem is they don't have that knowledge,
They
and
don't have the
and
education.
and I want to love her because she's my doctor and she does take great care of me. But that's what I'm wrestling with right now. I've got two separate doctors. I've got a sports doctor who's really working on the hormone stuff, and then I've got my practitioner who I have access to, who takes care of the colds and the things
Right.
which I don't really get that many of. But so so
There's
you,
normal and there's optimal. We
all
want
right. So let's
optimal.
talk about that. Let's get into that. What's normal and what's optimal and what are we shooting for here?
So normal versus optimal. I mean, normal, like you said, is you're 2 or 300. I mean, you can see guys who are 38 with 2 or 300 these days, which is terrible. It's declining. And your free testosterone. So you go look at total and free. You want to look at both of those. Your total testosterone. I mean, if you're not over 750, you you're going to feel it.
Yeah.
You're going to feel it. And if you're like on the borderline, you want to hold out longer, I get it. You could try things like HCG, which is a peptide that can boost your production for a while, but eventually that number, because of age, that number is going to come down. Your testosterone will just kind of decline. And so with hormone replacement, you can easily do 800, 900, 1200 and be in a nice safe range, or between 800 and 1200 and be in a safe range for your total. Free testosterone, there's two different metrics, so the numbers get thrown off. They're basically 1/10 off. One is just a decimal move of the decimal point. So if your free testosterone is getting measured in between like 2 to 25, and we know that's the range I'm going to talk about now. Sometimes they have one where it's like 20 to 250. It's just all it is a decimal point. So just translate it that way if you start looking at your free, and it's in the hundreds range. But ideally, we want somewhere in the high teens to low 20s. So somewhere between 15 and 25 is going to be where a guy is going to feel ideal. And probably right around 20 is a nice average. But some guys are like, hey, I'm good at 16 with a free T. Other guys, I need 25. And that's where I feel great. There's not a wrong one. I mean, the little bit is, how are you feeling? What side effects? Do you have oily skin you don't want? Is it affecting your blood pressure a little bit if it's too high? Are you retaining fluid? These are not life and death things. These are just, how do I make you want to zero it in for your ideal for your needs.
Yeah, I started TRT.
Hmm.
But pre-TRT, my red blood cells were a little high. I had a, you know,
Hmm.
those numbers were kind of on the borderline. I started the TRT, my red blood cells went up a little bit. She introduced me to a blood donation protocol, which seems to
Yeah.
have dropped that dramatically. And it seems like a lot of men that are in that TRT supplement may have to enter that protocol just to it kind of kicks up the red blood cell creation.
Right. Yeah. Right. Hematocrit. Yeah. The blood vessels, hematocrits. Yeah. So donating blood is a great way to manage that. And it's simple, painless, and it's actually beneficial to other people. So,
Yeah,
I mean, it's of all the things you could do to help your health, that's minor, considering the benefits you get from the TRT, which is eliminating the brain fog, then not just increased libido, but just your personal drive, your creativity, holding on the muscle, the resistance to heart disease, resistance to insulin, resistance, basically. So metabolic disease, you're staving that off, getting rid of that extra belly fat. There's so many benefits to TRT, for men and for women to get testosterone on board as well, because women have 10 times more testosterone than they do of estrogen and progesterone. And many times that starts dipping when they're 35 or 40, long before menopause. They can benefit from a little TRT just in a smaller dose than the men do. And then they have all the great benefits from it too. Right. And that can also help when you mentioned the motivation with food. It can help with that motivation and that consistency with getting that workout in, because you're going to recover better. You're going to perform better. You're going to feel better afterwards. The TRT can help you stay consistent, with that, with all those things, with your exercise and your diet, right? I mean, they work together. Not one is a replacement for the other, but they work together to help you, get the performance directly from the TRT, but also helps you with that consistency with the lifestyle measures. It can help your sleep. So they work well. It's generally easy to get in the United States if you find the right doc that can help diagnose the ranges. And sometimes that's where it's a little bit wild westy, but it's getting better. It's getting better, where we have some integrative health doctors who understand the difference between normal and optimal, can help you zero in on that range using both the optimal ranges and how it's impacting you on a personal level. So there's a little bit of that individualized tweaking that should take place with any kind of hormone replacement therapy. So that's where, like, dosing, I like to do 2 doses a week. Personally, I'll take what my total dose is and I'll split it into two. It tends to have I think the testosterone has a half-life right around 5 days. And so if you can do, and I'm not telling you this is the way you should do it. I'm not a medical professional.
yeah, yeah,
I have found this, what my clients have found. The 1 dose a week, kind of, you have a little bit of a peak and a drop.
yeah, yeah. I was having so I was having that peak and drop.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
2 is a good way to stay that off without having to do it too many more times. I mean,
yeah.
microdosing several times a week, if that's good with you, then that's great. There's people who use the cream who put it on every day. So that's a daily microdose. If you're good for doing injections 3 or 4 times a week and splitting that up across that time, great. The total is still coming in the same, but you're having less peaks and valleys.
All right, so I've been trying the microdosing. I took the main dose, and I talked to my doctor. He's like, "Yeah, that's great. Try it." I do it 4 days a week.
Hmm.
And I just noticed, at least I'm in that protocol for this month. I just thought I'd try it for the month and see how it did. And I'm just
Yeah.
noticing that, oh, great. It seems to be working now. All right. So now TRT, you get some hormone replacement. Now, what about peptides?
Peptides are awesome. I think it's still a little bit Wild Westy. We're still learning about them. The sourcing is important. I mean, don't buy them off Amazon, please. And especially if you find it's like, oh, look, BPC for $10 on Amazon. That's crap. And it might even be dangerous because you've got to have a good seal on those things. Um, the two main sources now are research peptides from a research chemical company, or compounded. You're going to pay a little more for compounded. They're probably slightly more on the safety side, but it's almost impossible. I mean, to find everything you need compounded could be difficult. So I use both. I've used both. I've sourced both. There are good quality sources out there for both research and compounded peptides. And they are basically peptides. If you don't know, peptides are the foundation of protein, right? Your peptides turn into amino acids and proteins. And so uh, we have these naturally occurring in our body. What we're doing is isolating specific peptides and increasing the population of it in our body to stimulate a certain reaction. It could be the rebuilding or repairing of a certain tissue, like an organ, or it could be to stimulate the release of a hormone or some other, um, neurotransmitter. I mean, so basically creating a chemical reaction or repair reaction within the body. So they're very natural. Uh, and it just depends on the dosing, which is going to vary from peptide
So
to
give me.
peptide.
So I feel a little bit like it's the wild, wild west. It's again, go back to the cat chasing a laser pointer. There's a lot of them out there to
Yeah.
choose from. In the protocols that you're working with on your clients, and they're you've seen successful. Give me some. Which ones you're. Maybe let's do this. Let's start with your top three peptides that you are doing or your clients are doing that you're seeing some good results with.
Okay. Let's look at, there's some that stimulate growth hormone, right? Human growth hormone. So there's the big ones are tesamorelin and ipamorelin. Both I think are great. They create kind of a surge, like a sudden impulse. So you could take that before bed to get that growth hormone release for improving repair and release and maybe deep sleep. Or if you go into the gym early and you haven't really eaten much or at all, and you want to take a little of that right before you start your workout, like a half hour to an hour before you start your workout, remember strength training also stimulates growth hormone release. And so bringing those two, a growth hormone stimulant and your workout together, especially if you're again, first thing in the morning, you don't have much, insulin is low, blood sugar is kind of normal, and you don't have anything interfering hormonally, and you combine the strength training with the growth hormone stimulator, that's a good combo too. So to kind of pick where you want your what works for you, or where you want to focus. But there's a nice combo of ipamorelin with CJC, which is another growth hormone stimulant, which is not the peak. It's a more of a long, steady over 4 or 5 days. So I like those as a stack. Um, if you're looking at, let's just take the elephant in the room, the GLPs, right?
Yep.
Which are the ones that, like, they basically, the drug companies have taken a peptide that was been around for a long time with the compounders, and they made the delivery system better and they patented it. So a peptide you can't patent, but their delivery system is what they patent. So it goes in and they dose it large, and we have all these extreme weight loss
So
going
you're
on.
talking about the Zepbound,
Yes,
the
Ozempic, Zepbouncer,
Ozempics. Yep. Yep.
Zepatides,
Yep.
and so forth. And so a lot of people benefit from microdosing that along with good habits. It's we see the problems is when people are relying that as the only mechanism for weight loss, and they're not addressing they're not really changing their habits. They're not lifting weights. They're not trying to prioritize quality food or protein, and they over leverage the GLP. Like, a little is good, more is better, right? The poison's in the dose. And so if you have a little bit along with other habits, you can make, if you need to lose weight or improve your insulin sensitivity, right? That hormonal balance, these can be beneficial to help you get there. The plan should be you use as little as necessary, change your lifestyle habits so be conducive to maintain the place you're trying to achieve, and then come off of them. But we have people using the point that I can't come off, right? As soon as they come off, they feel inflammation, they start gaining weight again. They've over leveraged them. So how you use them is real important. There's a third one out there called retatrutide, which is not being, uh, Lilly's working on it, but they haven't. No one's got a patent on it yet. It's kind of out there with the research chemical, which has so Ozempic, or the the first one that came out, is it's GLP-1 has one peptide. And we have GLP-2, which is tirzepatide, like the Zepbound, that has two peptides. Retatrutide has three, so it kind of balances out the fact you don't have all the side effects like the constipation, the stomach upset. It doesn't just destroy your appetite. It's a little more subtle, keeps you good between meals, keeps you kind of on track between meals, kills those little snacky feelings, and really lowers inflammation on a you combine that well with good habits,
Is that a
right?
microdose type of deal, or
Yeah,
are
I
you
would
doing that once a
totally
week?
microdose the retatrutide, totally microdose it because
Wait,
it's
wait,
for,
what's that look like? What's that protocol? 3 times a week or 5 times a week?
I would say a small dose once or twice a week tops. You really don't need much of it. It's going to got
Okay.
these three peptides in it that are affecting your insulin hormone, insulin type, or blood sugar controlling hormones, and it can really lowers inflammation. And you can cycle on and off of these for like, 8 weeks on, 8 weeks off, or 6 weeks
So
on.
so do you recommend, or the folks you're seeing do that, are you seeing them do a cycle, take some time off and do something different? Are
Yes.
they changing the cycle so that what's the purpose of that? Is that really
So that
to
you
kind
don't
of
build resistance to it. You don't build
okay,
up resistance.
got it,
Now,
got
if
it.
you're
So
microdosing, some people would argue, hey, it's such a small dose, you're not going to build up resistance. I think we're capable of building up an adaptation resistance to just about anything. But the small, even if you do it 8 weeks on and 4 weeks off, if you're really trying to get aggressive for a while, um, I do think taking some time off just so your body doesn't get resistant, you have to increase the dose because you really want it to be a little help. You want to be a tool or strategy that helps you with everything else you're doing. You don't want it to be the main driver. That's where your foundational habits are helping, and your hormone replacement if you're onto that, if that's what strategy you're doing as
so
well.
for me, I kind of look at it like the patch was when I quit smoking, right?
Correct.
When I quit smoking, the patch was just, it got me off the habits and the things and kind of built
Yeah.
in some stuff. And, and then I got to a point where I had to take the patch off and I had some withdrawals, but I had already broken the habits where every time I went to my car, every time got walked out of a meeting, every time I walked out
Mhm.
of an airport, there was these places where my body just, cutting back from the powerful addiction would just go, you have to smoke now. And so break it. So you're saying the same thing there. You get just enough to get you into the habits.
They're great at taking the weight off because they really do balance out the
Yeah,
hormones that we've
yeah.
driven out of place through the processed food. Get
All right,
rid of the processed food, start moving, clean your diet up, let the peptide do its work, which is really help you lose weight. When you get there, you taper off. You
all right. Let's
taper
get
off.
to my last one. I would talk about what's your feelings on fasting. Let's talk a little bit about that and fasting protocols.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm long-winded on these. I kind of,
No, no, no. Just listen. Here, you and I are going to do more on. I think we can just break these down and do one at a time and do a whole podcast on each
probably
section of
so.
this. But let's
Um,
let's kind of dial into fasting and kind of get into that real quick.
I was big on fasting for 10 years, 12 years. I did intermittent fasting with a 16-hour fast, 24-hour fast once a week. I overdid it. And I think in small doses, you could probably use it for certain things, or like if you're doing a 3-day fast to clean stuff up from a autophagy standpoint, you do that once a quarter. Maybe there's some benefit to that. I think right now it's for many people where they're doing it every day or so frequently, it's adding to their stress level because
Mm,
there's a certain element of stress hormones that are elevated to release the sugar and fat into your system through elevating cortisol, adrenaline, and glucagon. And most of us don't need more cortisol and adrenaline going through our system. We have a stressful life as it is. So I no longer do intermittent fasting at all. I overcranked it. I crashed and burned. I had the elevated cortisol, the low thyroid. And I think overdoing it, like any hormetic stressor, creates too much stress. So I overdid it. So I would say be very mindful and limited in your fasting routines, and understand what's your goal.
be conscious. Get it
Be
here.
conscious. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Zane, we covered a lot. A lot of us are having the struggles, and there's just so many. I always tell people find a coach. Zane, if someone wants you as their coach, if they say, "All right, Anthony, I'm ready. I'm ready to get in here. I'm ready to go some protocols. I'm looking for someone to guide me." How do they get a hold of you, and how do they get engaged in having a coach like you support them?
Oh, I appreciate that. You can find a lot of information about me at zanegriggs.com, which is my website. I
I'll
have a
put that
free
down below. By the way, guys, it's down below. So just go click on the link that's right here, right down there.
Okay. And I've got this free download if you want to take a look at how I approach each client with diet, exercise, sleep. It has some ideal ranges for hormone replacement and a little bit about peptides. It's called free40plan.com. So FREE 40, the number 40 plan.com. And you can kind of get my approach, 2-3 page PDF. It'll tell you kind of how I would take on a client, what I would walk through, kind of what we just walked through just now, but only in 2 or 3 page PDF. So, and that's a great way. And then we can connect. I'll get your email but that'll give you an idea of what I'm about. But zanegriggs.com, I'm on most of the socials like Instagram and Facebook and so forth.
Get on his Instagram. I tell you right now, you got to get on his posts. You got to go check out his posts. They're freaking amazing. Look, it's inspiring. You know, you got to know his past and the bodybuilding, all the work he's done. Look, it's just a great place to be. And by the way, guys, all of you that are here still at this point in the podcast, you know what we're up to, right? We're working hard on doing this. We're building a community of great people that are in this, and all of us, right? All of you right now are what matter, right? We're all working on building a great environment for us to, to take to add more add more quality years to our life, right? More life to our years instead of years to our life, and both are important. But how do we add quality? Zane, it's a true pleasure, brother, having you on, and we're gonna have some more of these. Thank you for this.
I appreciate it, Anthony. I appreciate having me on. A great conversation.
Hey, audience members, another blowout week last week. 72,000 subscribers. We broke a new record with YouTube, and just it was great. Yeah, guys, 72.2 thousand subscribers. Nuts. That kid Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan, tell him.
Let's go.
Jonathan over here is looking for a raise. He gets 5,000 more subscribers. He gets a raise. If you right now could go down and like and subscribe, that kid, he's trying to get one of those electric skateboards, little things. He wants that thing. And he's like, he gets that if he gets a couple more bucks in his bank account. So if you could go down and do that right now, as always, we're so grateful for all of you listening. Thanks for being here.